Hello everyone, my name is Aaron and this is the Gameday Hour. Welcome back to another episode, and in today's episode we're going to be taking a look at fantasy football, what I do to prepare for a draft. Now, I draft a little differently than a lot of people, but I know a lot of people draft the way I do, and that is in person with a group of friends or in just a league that is set up by a specific owner, and we get together, magazines in arms, and start drafting. I'm going to talk about how I prepare for a draft and how I go about drafting, just so you guys get an idea of, in case you want to draft in this way, or if your way you're not seeing any progress, maybe this way will help you. So I'm going to be discussing all that in today's episode. So if you guys enjoyed this, if you do, like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get started. I'm going to want you to take some time to kind of picture this in your head. My draft this year is on August 19th at 11:30 a.m. Central Time. So how do I prepare? First, I go over to my Barnes & Nobles, which is nearby where I live, and I go pick up a magazine. And you probably are thinking, why am I going to pick up a fantasy magazine if I created this whole list? Well, I like to take a magazine to see what the experts also think, mix it with what I said, and try to find a balance within it, while also crossing off names as the draft goes by. You want to get there early. You want to kind of take a look over at the players, but you also want to take a look at asterisks that you don't want to miss while you're drafting. Because the number one rule when it comes to drafting is to treat every pick as if it is a game changer. Even if it is the last round 15 pick, it's going to mean something. You don't want to draft and then have to be like, oh, I have to make a trade because I did a poor draft. I want you to think about this draft as you go in. So we get to the place that we're gonna go, and you sit down, take a look at the magazine. You first want to find in the magazine the type of scoring. So one of the more common draft scoring is PPR, but I know people, they are a little different with their leagues. Not every league runs by PPR, and a lot of leagues are different in how you draft. So our draft is a snake draft. It starts from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then it moves up in the second round 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it continues that cycle throughout all the rounds. We have 15 slots in our draft, and this is where my league is a little different than your guys' leagues. Generally, you always go by the fantasy league that you are joining in, whether you're doing it on Yahoo or ESPN, and they have a specific way that you draft, or there's not a way, but you have to have these positions: at least 2 quarterbacks, at least 2 kickers, and at least 2 defenses. We get 4 running backs and 5 with a mixture of wide receiver and tight end. So you can have 5 wide receivers and no tight ends in the league that I'm a part of, and that's just kind of how it is. But you have to find 5 receivers in general. It don't matter who it is, just who you think is going to make the most points. Our scoring is also a little different. We have like some interesting rules, like for a quarterback you have to get at least 15 passing yards to make 1 point, because we don't have decimals. It's full points how we do it. Touchdowns worth 6 points. There's this rule where if you have a bonus touchdown where a touchdown's over 40 yards or more, you get an extra 6 points as if you scored 2 touchdowns. You also got rules like for every 10 receiving yards or every 10 rushing yards, you get a singular point. If somebody breaks 100 yards, they get a bonus. And those are the rules that we have. So it's not your classical PPR. It's much different. So we're looking for the all-around superstar players. That's why every pick matters in this league. But the way we set up our lineups is a little different. So you can have all 5 wide receivers, or maybe you can have 4 running backs and 1 receiver. They're all interchangeable. We have some very interesting rules, but we look for the best of the best that we can offer. So we get to this draft. I'm looking through. There's 2 things you want to make sure that you keep an eye on when you draft, because when you draft, you need to pay full attention to the people around you and how you draft and see what you need. But there's 2 things you need to look out for in a player, and that is bye weeks and injuries. So injuries goes without saying. You don't want to draft someone and then realize, oh, he's going to be out for 6 weeks, or he's suspended for this amount of time. I just wasted a draft pick. Now I got to go into free agency, when you could have avoided that in the first place. So you want to be sure to look for injuries and suspensions, just so you don't end up accidentally drafting a player that you're going to 1 second or a minute later regret. But bye weeks is something that people often end up forgetting when they draft. So in our league, again, I said we have 2 quarterbacks, we have 2 kickers, and 2 defenses. It's mandatory that we have at least 2 of those on a roster at all times. That's just kind of the rule, just so we're not seeing other advantages with someone having 7 receivers and 1 kicker and 1 defense, how some leagues do it. We have to have at least 2 at each position, and of course running back and receivers different. You can get away with running back and receivers having the same bye week as long as just 1 pair. But if you get 2 quarterbacks and they have the same bye week, you're in for some trouble when that time comes around. And it's interesting because like people want to have like last season Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. If you had those 2 players on your team, you're like, wow, these are dominant 40-point players. Well, 40 points for our league. I don't know how much they'd be for your league, but for us, it'd be like 40 sometimes. It's like, oh my goodness, look at this dominance. And then you realize that, oh, they have the same bye week. I'm going to have to potentially trade one of these players or forfeit a single week. Do you want to forfeit a single week? No. Because if you lose that week and you also don't score a lot of points, see, in our league, it's record first, point second. You lose out on points, that's big. That is terrible. And so you want to be sure that each player, you can start a full lineup without having to deal with bye week troubles. This is also part of the reason why you go get yourself a magazine, a fantasy magazine, so you can list off and see, oh, this player and this player have the same bye week. Okay, I'm gonna have to make a choice between one of the 2. I can't take them both. Again, you can get away with it with running backs and receivers in our league because we have an equal amount. But in your league, try not drafting with the same bye week on a singular position. I mean, if you have like a running back and a wide receiver that has the same bye week, that's fine. Like there's no harm done there. But if you have the same position, it could get very tricky, to say the least. So be careful on that. Again, bye weeks, injuries, and suspensions go along with injuries. You take a look at each of those, study it, and then now we get to the draft. Now, in my league this year, I'm either the 3rd or the 4th pick. So how do I draft? Well, I'll tell you, I draft similarly to a lot of players, but in my league, everybody drafts differently. I generally do not go after a quarterback early because if you take a look at fantasy points, a quarterback generally has around 20 to 40 points. Average, somewhere in that regards. And if they're below 20, they're somewhere still at 19. Many receivers and many running backs don't have that average per week. So you want to go after the big dogs early. I mean, we're talking the Nick Chubbs, the Christian McCaffreys, the Justin Jeffersons, the Jamar Chases, those type of players. I like to at least establish the 1 running back and 1 wide receiver spot before I go after a quarterback. It's not that I don't have a quarterback in mind. I know exactly who I want to draft. I know for a fact, but by the way I draft, I have to understand I'm probably not going to get Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. I'm just probably not going to get those players anymore. So you have to just go into the draft with the fact that the players that you would probably really want might not be the best choices for you if you're looking to have a roster that's balanced and high scoring across the board. That's the type of roster you want. Someone that's projected like 108 to 120 points. Anything lower, that could be a very struggling endeavor you have to deal with. But I hope that you guys don't have to deal with it because you're drafting running backs and wide receivers early. If you want to draft a quarterback, that's fine. You just have to, you're basically going into it with the idea that this quarterback is going to have to carry. Because I'm not going to have a fresh number 1 at either position. You might be able to get away with it if you're like middle of the pack. But if you're somewhere where I'm at, which is like near the top or near the bottom, knowing that you have a long distance in between your next pick at some points, and then it's really soon after other points, you have to think really hard, like, do I want a quarterback now or would I draft later? And for me, I generally draft later. I mean, the earliest I would draft a quarterback would probably be round 3. That's just kind of where my mindset is on it. But I am not saying who I'm going to draft, because if somebody is watching this who's in my league, I want them to get an advantage of where I'm going to draft first. So I'm not going to say what players I want. So as you're going through the rounds, this is kind of how it looks like to me. You go running back, wide receiver early, get your starting quarterback in 3 or 4, and then running back, wide receiver, running back, wide receiver. And then when I get to 7 and 8, I start to say, okay, what about kickers and defenses? I want to have an establishing kicker and defense. For me, if I wanted the number 1 at both, I'd go Justin Tucker's and San Francisco's defense. That's where I would say there if you wanted to go high on them. But I know generally a lot of people pick kickers last. That's why in a lot of my fantasy football team reviews, I had kickers at rounds 15 through 16 in a lot of cases, because I'm like, yeah, they're generally not looked at that much unless it's like Tucker or Butker or Carlson, any of those players. You're not going to really see kickers being drafted super early. So I wait for the direct middle of the draft to establish that, and then I wait till the end of the draft and go back to getting wide receivers and running backs, and then maybe a quarterback at rounds 11 or 12, and then continue onwards. So that's how I do the draft. Like, establish your quarterback position early, but not earlier than establishing your main running back and wide receiver. That's where I have it, and then kickers, defenses in the middle, and directly at the end. That is kind of what a draft looks like to me. A big rule I want to give you guys when you draft. I said you need to pay attention. You need to understand what you need. Do not be drafting just so you can get to thinking about trading later. If you get injuries throughout the year, then of course trades might be necessary. Of course, free agency picks is also necessary. But don't go into this draft and saying, man, let me get a lineup to where I can create the best trades. I know some people that do that. Don't do that, because what it ends up doing is you might compromise your early start. And if you start to fall behind early, it's going to really be hard to dig out of that hole if you're in the 7 or 8 spot, or even 9 or 10. It's hard to dig out of that. You want to draft with the knowledge like this team is going to go all the way. I don't want to draft or to make a trade at all. I don't want to make a trade at all throughout the year unless I absolutely have to. It should be a need, not a want. And for agency picks, again, it should be a need, not a want. You need to draft better. You need to draft as good as you can. Every position counts. Even the last kicker, even the last defense, you want to say, oh, well, when I bring them in, I know they're going to go off. I know they'll kill the bye week that my starter has. I know my backup quarterback will kill when he comes in. I just know these things. I'm not looking to trade. I'm not looking to pick up from free agency. I'm not saying don't pick up from free agency, because at some points you can get away with the bottom of the barrel. But you don't want to go super heavy with free agency moves. I know some people that do, and it works out for them, but sometimes you might be impatient with your player, like I was last year. I was impatient with some of my players, which is what led me to becoming the high draft pick, because I had a bad season. I got impatient. I don't want to get impatient again. So learn to be content and patient with your team. Don't get an overreaction from week 1. But be sure that you're drafting so that every game you feel like you're going to win, and you're not thinking, oh, what can I get? What can I do to make this better? Just do the right thing and get better on your first draft picks. That's it. And when your draft is over, just look back to your team, kind of be looking towards the first week 1 games, and then, get to it. Get to setting up lineups. Don't really always look at free agency. If you want to look at free agency, that's fine, but don't go trigger happy with it. And yeah, that is all the advice I have for you guys today. It's very simple. Of course, a lot of people are probably looking at this and like, oh, well, probably know how to do this already. These are just kind of how I go through it, my mindset going into the draft. And if you guys want to take after it, it's pretty good. I generally have a lot of success when it comes to drafting and making it into playoffs. Ever since I've been in this league, I've only did not make the playoffs 1 time. I've won a championship, and I've been the number 1 seed at least twice. So I feel like I know what I'm doing just a little bit. And that will do it for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoy, and if you do, please leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe. Good luck to all you guys and your drafts. I kind of want to see what you guys end up getting. So when you do your draft and you get your team together, leave it down in the comments. I want to read what some people come up with their draft, and I kind of wanted to see like how do people think about these players And yeah, I want to see what people are doing when they draft, so maybe I can be informed and maybe switch up my strategy if my strategy doesn't work. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you do, please like, comment down below, and subscribe. Go follow me on Facebook, X, and Instagram, all the social media pages, especially X. I want to be able to get into interactions with you guys on Twitter, X, and again, it's right here. I know part of it's cut off, but if you need to know, you don't go into my descriptions, this is where you can find me at all these spots. Anyways, yeah, that'll do it for today's episode. The next set of episodes are going to be ranking NFL teams' records, predicting their records, starting with the AFC, which I hope you guys are looking forward to. So yeah, you guys have a great day, take care, and goodbye.